Hello everyone, and thank you for joining me today. So in my last session I was working in quite a vertical direction because of the way the colors are going, because of course there's a column here in the picture, so it was more lent itself to column style stitching instead of my normal diagonal style. But now that I'm moving away from the columns, I'm going to be basically converting back to diagonal at this point, I think. So yeah, because as usual I just kind of follow the colors and let them tell me what to do, so that's what they told me to do. Now they're telling me to go back to diagonal. So pretty much almost acting as if I had a straight edge here because it was the beginning edge of my pattern kind of thing. Same sort of idea. But yeah, I've only got 2 columns left, just here and here, and then we'll go back to the left edge and start again. Oops. So yeah, different people have different ways of doing this. I've seen a few where they do a diagonal across the entire pattern, moving their frame as necessary. Some people like to feather or stagger their bottom edge to avoid a line, but I haven't really had any problems with lines, so I don't worry about it. And I think also parking below that line rather than ending all the threads probably helps. But who knows? I used to stitch by page and I never had line problems either, so people say it's mostly a tension issue. Yeah, I've actually been lucky with that. I never had a problem with that, and when I learned to knit, I never had a problem with tension there either. My grandma taught me, I think I was 7 or 8. Yeah, she taught me the basics. And then I later had people, they said, so how did you learn to keep an even tension? And I was thinking, why is that hard? Because for me it wasn't. So years later I tried to learn some crochet and I did have more trouble with my tension, and I'm wondering if it was because it was, you know, 1 hook instead of 2 needles, but who knows. Or just because I've been knitting at that point for, you know, 15, 20 years, and I'm very used to it, and crochet was a new thing to learn, so I didn't really do a lot with crochet. I have some crochet hooks, but I mostly use them to help with my knitting. They're really useful for when you drop stitches, to help you pick them back up, and also for doing provisional cast-ons, which is yeah, neat, where you can make a crochet chain, then you pick up stitches in it, then later when you unravel the crochet chain you'll end up with live stitches, so you can then stitch the opposite direction with no seams. So yeah, so I've done that before. And you can also use live stitches to graft 2 pieces together with the Kitchener stitch. Apparently it was developed by a noble, Kitchener, apparently, who was a military leader, and the seams in the socks would irritate the soldier's toes. And I mean, if a soldier can't march, then yeah, it's pretty hard for him to fight if he's got bad feet, right? So developed a way to join pieces of knitting without a seam. It looks intimidating at first, but it's actually, once you learn it, it's not. It's Like you have to set up and it's, you know, knit front off, knit purl on and stuff. But in the end, once you figure it out, you're really just going back and forth between the needles, going knit, knit, purl, purl, knit, knit, purl, purl. So yeah, I was really intimidated by it for a long time, but once I learned it, I realized it's actually not as tough as it looks. And it's pretty cool to be able to join things seamlessly that way. Although in knitting, some things need seams for stability. I knit a lot of garments that have no seams, but yeah, sometimes seams help, and you can actually, if things start stretching out of shape, you can actually use crochet on the inside to provide a bit more structure. Or when you've knitted blankets in different pieces and sewn them together, the sewing is not as strong. And so if you crochet it together, it actually holds quite firmly. So yeah, just kind of interesting things about different fiber arts. Using pin stitches a lot here because when I draw it along the back and I do it working from the front without turning my work, because I'm right-handed, it's just easier to go from left to a right direction instead of going the other way. But when you get near the edges, you want to be careful that none of your tails are going past the finished edge of your work, especially dark colors, because they can really show through. I had a project I'd finished and I hadn't really been careful of that, and after I washed and ironed it, you could see sometimes the ends, and so I had to go and either trim them or thread them back on a needle and make sure that they went back towards the center of my work. So yeah, just better to just prevent that in the first place now. Sometimes when I get near the edge and it's getting harder to do that, I will actually just leave all the ends aside until I can take my whole frame out of my clamp stand, and then I'll just turn it over and do all the ends at once. Secure them all that way. So 99% of the time I finish from the front, but yeah, that far right edge can sometimes be a little trickier because I am not ambidextrous, so. So I can thread it going back that way without turning it, but it is a lot tougher for me to do. I did that a couple times yesterday and then I poked myself with the needles, so. Yeah, the needles I use are duller than a sewing needle, but they are a bit sharper than a lot of tapestry needles. And I like that because it makes pin stitches easier, but then yeah, you also have to be careful not to injure yourself with it. Yeah, it's a very gloomy day out there today. No sun. Oops. Although speaking of splitting fabric, that's what I just did. Yeah. Yeah, so I got my car back from the shop yesterday. Woohoo! Yeah, it looks beautiful. We've been to that shop before. They always do a good job. Very happy with them. Yeah, unfortunately, they said there were no huge surprises when they actually opened it up. Had to take that back end off. I was a little worried the frame was going to be bent, but it wasn't. I guess I was actually kind of lucky that the vehicle that hit me is taller, and so it didn't really hit the bumper, it hit more the back hatch. So it was more cosmetic damage than actual structural damage. The frame was okay. So, which is why it didn't get written off, thankfully. But yes, and I missed that car stereo. My rental did not have a subwoofer, and my Element definitely does. Pardon me. Yeah, I don't know if it was special ordered with a better stereo, because we bought it used. I never buy cars new. They lose so much value in the first couple of years. So, yeah, I've only ever driven or bought used cars. Well, I say it as if I've had so many, but I've only had two. Yeah, I had a Honda CR-V, a 97, and then now I have a 2009 Element. Pardon me. Yeah, actually, I went online looking at bumper stickers, and I went, you know, I realized I did not have any Star Trek bumper stickers, and I mean, that's an oversight for someone who's as big of a Star Trek fan as I am. I have two different Star Trek uniforms for Halloween costumes. I have a long sleeve one that's from the original series, the blue one, with the the gold rickrack on the cuffs, original series. So I have that one. And then I had a shorter sleeve one that was from the Into Darkness movie. I haven't worn that one as much though, because it's more polyester, so it's not as comfortable. The original series one is more cotton, like it's a cotton polyester blend, but it breathes a bit better, so it's more comfortable. And I ended up just liking the look of it more. So yeah, I wear that with some black leggings and some black knee-high boots. I even got one of those bumper hair things to make my hair into a mini beehive like they had in the original series. I never wore the bumper things when they were popular, like the early 2000s. So yeah, I only wear it for that. Yeah, I'm not someone who's terribly good at styling hair. That's never been my forte. That kind of stuff or doing makeup, I'm no good at that. I'm one of those, hey, I brushed my hair, I brushed my teeth, I'm good to go. You know, I'm clean. So maybe some chapstick and a little moisturizer, but that's about it. I'm not good at it. I'm too cheap. And it's a sensory thing too. I don't like the feel of heavy makeup on my face. I had to wear makeup when I was in dance when I was a kid, and I could not wait to wash it off. Especially that heavy stage makeup is, yeah, it's not comfortable. Yeah, I went through a phase in high school where I tried, but yeah, it's not for me. Oops. That was a short piece, so I ended up accidentally unthreading it. Yeah, it's interesting how different skills don't transfer. Oh, I had a friend who was doing shared a video of how to do victory rolls. Easy, different ways. And yeah, I tried them and I can't do any of them. So I do love that look. That 1940s iconic Ingrid Bergman look is beautiful, but unless I pay someone to do my hair that way, that's not going to happen. I do not have the talent for it. Oh, look at that. I've done 234 stitches today since this morning. I like numbers like that. I don't know why. Oh, and look at that. I didn't even realize I passed the 130,000 stitch mark today. Woohoo. Yeah, we're 57%, closing in on 58. So we will get there. Okay. Yeah, I can see I'm going to do multiple threads for this. Let's see how long this one even is, whether it's worth parking anywhere. Okay. Gonna be a bit of wandering around with this color. I can tell that right now. Okay. Oh, I thought there was thunder for a second, but no, that's my neighbor taking in their garbage can. I was thinking it's been raining, but it hasn't been that stormy to have thunder. Oh, whoops. I was trying to park it there. There we go. Okay. No, I love when it lines up so easily that way. I was just approximating. Yeah, I'll only do pin stitches if they're at least 5 stitches away from the edge. Anything closer to that, and I would worry that the ends will show through past the edge of the design. So you can see I've got sort of that first diagonal sort of started, a bit of a triangle there, and then I'm going to carry on with the next one. So we're back to diagonal. And some slightly bigger blocks of color, so this should go a little faster today. Yeah, this area, like I said, the last few times I've been getting about 600 stitches in a day's work, so that's nice. My spreadsheet estimates I'll be done by November. We shall see what happens. It was originally October, but as I'm making videos now, that takes some time away from stitching, so I don't get quite as much done. But still making good progress, so I'm happy with it. Yeah, so here's, I can do this sort of whole big block here, a dozen stitches here in one go. So I shall. Paper carriers delivering newspapers, so neighbors' dogs are going wild. Yeah, we got some new neighbors recently. There was an older retired couple who shared our back fence with us. And so, yeah, they sold their place. Younger people moved in. They got a couple of dogs. Yeah, they said the people who sold the place said they were surprised somebody came in and bought it without even coming to walk through it. That doesn't happen very often. But yeah, they're moving to be closer to their grown children and grandchildren. Yeah, they were good neighbors. It was so nice too. They were they're downsizing, so they called up and said, we got some tools and kitchenware, and if you want any of it, help yourself. Otherwise, we're taking it to the donation. But I have plenty of cookware. I already don't have enough cupboard space as it is. It kind of a Tetris game and stacking pots inside other pots so that they all fit. And my cupboard doors won't quite close because of the handles of the pots are in the way. So yeah, I don't need any more cookware, that's for sure. I got enough. In fact, my husband had to build me a counter cupboard extension. So I have too many appliances. But yeah, we got it's really nice, especially when I'm doing my canning, making juice or jam. I got like 8 feet of counter space, 8 by like 3. So yeah, lots of room to get that done, because no counter space in canning is not a good combination. Especially since when I'm making juice, I usually have so much that I am still juicing while I'm also canning stuff that I've already juiced, because I just don't have enough room to do all of one step at once. So yeah, I got a smaller fridge, so after I juice it and make the concentrate, it goes in the fridge until the next day when I can and cook it. Because yeah, you got to keep it, refrigerated once you've pressed it. And I like to have it sit overnight, because then any remaining sediment sinks to the bottom, and then when you can it, you pour everything about the last inch out, so you end up with almost no sediment in it. I can't entirely eliminate it, but I've got a pretty good system now. I've been doing it for, let me think, 2013, 2012, something like that. So it's been, yeah, I've been doing it a long time. But I said every year I have to kind of forget how much work it is, because it is a lot of work before I'm willing to do it again. And the worst part is I usually use a steam mop on my floor, but when it's juice, it's way too sticky. You have to get down on your hands and knees to scrub it. There's just no way around it. And often you have to scrub it a couple of times to get that stickiness out. So you get a hands and knees scrub it, then go over it with a traditional mop, not the steam mop, but like the sponge or string mop, to really get all that stickiness up. And it is a lot of work. Because I tried other ways of cleaning it without sort of the get on the hands and knees and scrub it, and it just does not come clean. You're just sticky. So yeah, I can see why farms and things that would sell their own juice would have a special like juicing shed for it, and not be doing it in your kitchen. It is a mess. And you especially need to scrub all that up, because you do not want ants. Yeah, we had a persistent anthill next to our house. And I think we finally managed to get rid of it, but my husband tried to dig a bunch of it out, and it went too deep. And tried all these different things, and then he had some leftover gas, and he dumped the gas down there. Those little jerks were still alive. So I had someone, well, you could have lit it on fire. I said, yeah, but it went down right beside my house. I don't think I should be lighting that on fire. That would be a very bad idea. We have some ants that are away from the house, and I don't mind them because they don't come in the house. But yeah, the ones that were right up against the house, well, you couldn't keep those out no matter how clean you keep the house. So okay. Goodness, there. Having difficulty finding the right place. Well, yeah, so what I was saying way back was I ordered Star Trek bumper sticker, and I actually was able to get a personalized one off of Cafe Press. So it'll say USS, and then you get to pick what it says. So you could put like your last name, but I just picked it says USS Element, since I'm driving an Element. So, and I mean, it kind of fits USS Enterprise, USS Element. So yeah, I'm pretty excited for that to arrive. It wasn't that expensive either. Like with shipping, was just over $15 for a 10 by 3. So quite a large decal. Yeah. So I'm excited for that to arrive. Yeah, and our Wi-Fi address is NCC-1701, which of course is the registry number of the Enterprise from the original series. We could have gone with NCC-1701D because of the Next Generation Picard ship, but we decided to just go the original, even if we prefer the Next Generation to the original series. Yeah, actually, my favorite is DS9, Deep Space Nine. It didn't really catch on for me at first. It wasn't until it was in reruns years later, and I wanted some Star Trek, and there was no Next Generation on, just Deep Space Nine. So I thought, okay, I'll give it a try. And yeah, I ended up getting hooked. That was when they kind of, well, that show was less episodic. Oh, I almost grabbed the wrong one. Yeah, I need to grab this one. Again, Gridline saved me. But yeah, because I mean, the older shows, of course, were all episodic. Like, you can have character arcs, but mostly how things start out in the beginning is how things will end, right? Stuff will happen in between, then it gets resolved and everything goes back to normal. We'll see you next week. And then Deep Space Nine kind of started getting more into much longer arcs and more serialized stories, more like soap operas are, right? And yeah, I think maybe that's why it didn't click for me, because I didn't really watch it regularly, so it's harder to come in the middle. But then, yeah, watching it in reruns, and of course I didn't have to wait a week between episodes because it was in reruns, so there were 5 a week. So yeah, I got hooked on that. And somebody pointed out that it's basically like a Western in space if you really think of it, which I hadn't at the time, but they're right. They said, I mean, because it's set in one location instead of, you know, the ship flying off to a new location every week. It's set on one space station, and you have, you know, the indigenous people, and you have the new guy in town, you know, the mayor, basically, who's Cisco, and you have the doctor, and you have the sheriff, who's Odo. You have the bartender, Quark, and yeah, so they said, I thought, oh, well, that's why I liked it so much, because I love Westerns. Yeah. One of my friends is just discovering it for the first time. I'm like, oh, I'm so jealous. It's never the same. You can never have that first time watching a show again, right? Plus, I know all the cool trivia because I have the great big Deep Space Nine companion that was like 500 pages long. Oops. Oh dear. I hate when that happens. It didn't pull both strands evenly. Let's try that again. So yeah, they'll be making their observations. Oh, and now I grabbed a strand from another one. No wonder it didn't match up. Okay. So they'll be making their observations about the show as they go along, and I'll be like, oh, I get to tell you this cool piece of obscure trivia. And I told them the companion book's amazing, but do not read it until you've watched the whole series because it is quite obviously full of spoilers. Yeah. I started doing that when I was watching through it and realized, yeah, I better not do that because they will say, oh, you know, such and such a plot point is picked up later in the series when this happens. And it's like, wait, I didn't know that happened. Well, shoot, I wrecked it for myself. So yeah, I stopped reading it and waited till the end. Then I binged. After binge watching, I binged read the whole companion. So yeah, I actually accidentally got the ending of Game of Thrones wrecked for me. I was on, I don't know why, but for some reason YouTube recommended it to me, and it gave away major plot point. I was like, well, thanks a lot, guys, right? And I said, I think I earned kudos because I did not let my husband in on it, so it didn't get wrecked for him at least. And afterwards, I even said, I think I deserve some praise for my restraint in not telling you that this was coming. And he's like, yeah, thanks for not wrecking it for me. I said, well, I figured, you know, one of us got it spoiled for us. We shouldn't have to both suffer, right? The funny thing is, though, a lot of times in books, I will go onto Goodreads and actually look up spoilers because I've actually avoided a few books that it would have made me want to chuck them across the room before. And I don't know, I guess because when you do books, it takes longer to go through them. I'm a pretty fast reader, but it still takes longer to, you know, read the book than to watch, say, a 2-hour movie, right? It might take you 6 or 7 hours to read the book. So it's more of a time investment. Also, I can't really do other things while I am reading. I mean, I have occasionally had where I prop the book up and I've knit while I've read, but most of the time when I'm reading, I'm just reading. Every other time I'm multitasking. So like when I watch TV and I'm stitching at the same time. And so with the book, it's a real investment because I am only reading and it takes longer. And it takes a lot of mental energy because you are building the world in your head. And because, of course, yeah, when you watch a movie or whatever, they do that work for you. You just have to watch it. With the world building, you have to read the words and then your brain has to build the image in your mind. If your brain does that, that is. Of course, some people don't, but for me, that's how it works. And so, yeah, I'll get really upset if something awful happens that, like if a character does something that to me is just unforgivable, I'm going to be really mad if I spent, you know, hours reading it only for them to betray me like that. I'm going to be really mad. So yeah, like I have some authors who are basically auto buys, but even sometimes they've pulled stuff that I just didn't like. There was one author who I was about to buy her book because it was on sale. Yeah, that just came up kind of funny. I'm going to try that again. And then after reading some reviews with spoilers, oh, well, good. You just saved me the aggravation because, yeah, I kind of felt one of the protagonists, her actions were quite unforgivable, and she never really apologizes for them, even by the end of the book. The guy just kind of forgives her for, what was it called now? It was a book by Sarah MacLean, and it had a green cover. I can't remember the name of it. But I was reading the rest of the series, and in it, basically, she, for some reason, had to pass herself off as a widower, having been ruined, right? That she's no longer a virgin. So she drugs this guy, and so that everyone will think that she slept with him. And they told her, well, virgins bleed, so put some blood on the sheets. But she puts so much blood on the sheets that people think that he murdered her because she disappears. And she doesn't come back to clear this up. So this poor guy, he's a lord, so he doesn't really get charged with the murder. But of course, everyone thinks he's a murderer. So, I mean, it ruins his life. Nobody wants to have any, dealings with him. He can't marry anybody because nobody's going to risk him around their daughters, right? What if he kills them? And so he can't get an heir for his property. He's a lord, and he's ostracized, and just, the guy's life is under the shadow of suspicion, and he didn't deserve it, And then she comes back years later, though. So he's lived with this for years. She comes back years later, and it's like, oh yeah, hi, by the way, guys, I'm not dead. And he's not even mad for that long. And then she betrays him again somehow. And then again, it's just kind of like, oh, I guess I shouldn't have done that. And he's just kind of like, oh, that's fine, I forgive you. And I'm like, what, really? She should be groveling. She wrecked the guy's life twice. And I don't know, maybe she's that good in bed that he's just like, oh, well, that's okay, honey. Like, no, that would pee me off. And yeah, I read that from a reviewer, and then I said on their review, okay, well, thank you. You just saved me a bunch of aggravation. I would have been really mad to read the whole book and not have that satisfying payoff that she at least, made amends. And not just by marrying the guy, so yeah. I mean, I have loved some of her books, have been great. But that one I'm really glad I didn't waste my time on. Yeah, there was her first book, 9 Rules to Break When Romancing a Rake, I think it was called. Something like that, and I really enjoyed that one. And I've enjoyed some others by her as well. There was, oh, I'm so bad at titles. But yeah, I can suspend disbelief for some things, but when somebody's motivations don't really make sense, that really irks me. I can forgive some historical anachronisms and such. Depends how grievous they are. Some of them, no. But, yeah, when characters do things that either I think are ethically, or they just do not make sense to me why they would behave in such a manner, that, yeah, that I can't do. Yeah, I'm a big historical romance fan. I mean, I like some contemporary too, but yeah, I like escaping to a historical world. I wouldn't want to live in one, but I enjoy visiting them. Yeah, I think I would die if I had to live in the time of corsets. I tried one on once just out of curiosity. I didn't even get it all the way done up, and I was just like, get this thing off me. Just, it had fake boning in it and the stiffness of it, and it was like, oh my gosh, I cannot breathe. Get this off me. It feels like a torture device. Yeah, it was definitely not for me, and I'm so glad I did not live in an era where it was considered necessary. I am a comfortable clothes all the way kind of person. Yoga pants and, yeah, loose t-shirts and comfy soft sweatshirts. I like dressing up, but very occasionally. Happens and it's like, okay, now I'm good for another year. I haven't even had occasion to dress up for a couple of years now because pandemic, right? We just don't go anywhere. Pardon me, didn't have any Christmas parties for the last couple of years. Yeah, I'm a homebody, but I don't mind the occasional little party. Would be nice, but yeah, unfortunately there were still restrictions on last year, so my husband's work party was just for the employees because they work together all the time, right? So yeah, you start bringing in more people and there's just more potential for exposure. So okay, this is one thing about Pattern Keeper. I kind of wish I could drag this further over, even though the pattern ends. and you can't. That is my one complaint. I would like to be able to pull it away from the edge a little bit. I can deal. It is such a good program that my one or two complaints about it is not that big a deal. Certainly not a deal breaker. Like I said, I wish you could remove colors that you've zeroed out from the, so you could toggle them so that they don't appear, so you don't have to swipe through the whole list, especially when you're at the end and you've only got a few stitches left. That'd be nice, but again, minor complaint. Okay. So I am gonna thread this going back the other way because of course I don't want the ends to show, but I managed to do it not too difficult, even though it is going opposite to the way my dominant hand wants to do it. Oh yeah, this one was hanging down off of the edge instead of tucked away, and when I was stitching other stuff I actually caught it somehow into the stitches on the back that I was stitching. I caught one of these strands and I couldn't pull it out. So I can tell you stitching over threads definitely makes them secure because I had to trim it. I couldn't free the end. So that's why those were so uneven. Pardon me, because one strand got caught like that. Okay, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, lots and lots of this color. I'm just going to check what the other lengths are. That's a pretty decent length. And this one, yeah, it's not too bad either. Okay, so what I'm going to do is this. Oh, and let's see, that one that I parked earlier is also not too bad. So yeah, I have a few to sort of juggle here, but that's okay. I do not mind that. Yeah, I was saying anachronisms don't bother me as much, but sometimes they do. It really depends. Although, unfortunately, I learned, no, it's not food time yet, Buster. It isn't. No, it's not. Oh, you silly girl. No, it's not. It's not snack time for a couple more hours. Yeah, if you feed them too many fresh veggies, it can cause gastrointestinal problems for them. So, yes, if you let them, they would eat nothing but lettuce all day, but it wouldn't be healthy for them. They need that roughage of the hay, especially also to grind their teeth down because they grow throughout their life. So, yeah. She's just hoping if she begs enough. But I filled up your hay before I started this, so it's not like you're starving. There's plenty for you to eat. Anyway, as I was saying about, I learned that the phrase okay is a relatively modern one. It came from, what was it? The old meaning of all correct, basically in German, that a politician basically used the okay as his slogan in like the 1920s or something. And so then, of course, it became to its modern meaning of, you know, things are satisfactory, all right, you know. And unfortunately, though, people don't realize that, so they use okay a lot in historical settings, and it's quite jarring to me now. I didn't used to, I enjoyed it better when I didn't know that that was incorrect. Now it's like every time somebody says like finger in the eye, you can't ignore it. So yeah, all right. Or somebody said we use the phrase automatically a lot, But you have to remember, if this is pre-industrial, then there's no such word, because that's connected with machinery, automatons, and doing things automatically, right? So yeah, you have to change that phrasing to, you know, without conscious thought or something, but you can't use automatic because, yeah, that's an anachronism. It can be fairly jarring. Or like there was one when, yeah, I think I mentioned in a previous podcast, a character looks at a guy's hand to see if he's wearing a wedding ring, but this is the 1700s, and guys didn't start wearing the wedding rings commonly until the 1900s. So, yeah, there might have been, you know, some guys who did, but it definitely was not common enough that you would check a guy's ring finger to see if he was married, like you could now. Although neither my husband or I wear wedding rings anymore. I started getting nerve pain in my hand, and I had to take it off every time I wanted to knit or stitch or cook or type or basically anything that required fine motor skills. And I was always worried I'd lose it, so I just stopped wearing it. And my husband does a lot of work with machinery, and obviously rings are a hazard, right? You could really injure yourself if it gets caught in machinery. So again, he always had to take it off so much that he was afraid he'd lose it. In fact, he thought he might have lost it at a transmitter site field once, because he took it off and put it in his pocket. And then he said as he was gathering up his coveralls, he's worried that it had fallen out of his pocket. He couldn't find it for a long time. And it turned out it actually had fallen off of the nightstand and rolled under the bed, and I found it weeks later. But yeah, he was quite upset that it was probably at a field somewhere, and he says, I don't know how I'd find it unless I like rented a metal detector, you know, looked for it. So yeah, so I mean, even nowadays you can't be sure. I mean, we're still committed to the relationship, we just don't wear rings. So yeah, we had our 20th wedding anniversary this January, which I do not feel old enough for it to have been that long, but yeah, we married young. I was 20. He was 25, so. But we're also those kind of people who don't look our age either. I've been mistaken for my teenage son's older sister. My mom had the same, so I must have inherited her genes. But especially because I think that day I had my hair in kind of pigtail twists, because I was trying to get it go an extra day without washing it. And so I did it in these rope braids. And so I definitely looked younger than I actually am. So do I even look old enough to drive now? But yeah, they said nowadays, for us, they can check your ID very quickly, because if they see a 1 at the beginning of your birth date, a birth year, well, then they know that you're definitely legal age. Oh, what was it? There was someone who said as a teacher that one of my students started a paper with the phrase in the late 1900s, and I was very hurt because, hey, I was a child of the late 1900s. How dare you? I said, in the year 2000 just messed up our sense of time. You know, time stopped then. So yeah, when you say 20-year-old vehicle, I'm thinking of something that was made in, like, you know, 1980s, maybe 1990s, and it's like, oh, no, a 20-year-old vehicle is 2002. Oy. Like, how is that the case? Wasn't it 2002, like a couple years ago? No. No, it was not. Like, how is my kid going to be graduating in just another 3 years when I could swear I only graduated high school, you know what, 5 years ago? Yeah, no. It's been more than 20. Eek. Yeah, what was it somebody said about, hey, you know, remember when you were a kid and it was a big production to go onto the computer? Because, of course, we didn't have these smartphone handheld devices, and we had dial-up internet, right? And so going onto the computer was a big deal. You had to ask your parents, and sometimes they had to put in the password so that you could use the dial-up, and yeah, I remember like there were times, oh, again, I almost grabbed the wrong thread. Good thing for grid lines. And I remember there were times when my mom would be like, okay, well, I put in the password, and of course it shows up as stars. You don't know what it is. So that you guys can use the internet, but if you get kicked off once, that's it. You're done. Because you had to put in the password every time. It's not like now with Wi-Fi, right? Yeah, and so somebody said, like, how old are you guys? It said normal amount. I said, okay, I'm going to answer that now. Whenever some young whippersnapper asks how old I am, I'm going to say I'm a normal amount. Not like you babies. Ugh. Alrighty, 336. Yeah, like one of my friends wrote a book set in the 90s, and kids were asking when they read it, Mom, why did she have to stay behind at school to look something up in the library? Why couldn't she look it up at home? Like, haha, yeah. I remember when I had a question about something, writing it down on a piece of paper so that the next time I went to the library, I could go to the encyclopedias and look it up. Because, yeah, there was no such thing as just looking it up at home unless you were someone who had a set of encyclopedias, but only the rich people had that, right? Yeah, they stopped printing Encyclopedia Britannica. There's another institution that went away. I remember people used to come selling those door to door, or you could sign up to buy them in installments. Just wild to me now. Yeah, someone was saying it's kind of interesting. We rebuilt the Library of Alexandria, Wikipedia, with just nerds need to correct each other, which is true. Okay, so I'm gonna go further down the diagonal and come back up to those later. Just kind of following that edge. Yeah, and if it didn't have information in the encyclopedia, then you were kind of hooped. You had to know how to use the Dewey Decimal System and the card catalog. Yeah, of course, now you can all do that on computers. It'll tell you where to look, but yeah. Or I remember when they were still phasing out microfiche, but we had that for quite a while. Those machines, though, they made me motion sick. Because, you would figure out, oh, okay, it's in, E17, and then the person is moving the thing around to find it, and all the pages are going across the screen, and they go whipping by so fast. Yeah, they actually made me ill. I'm very easily motion sick, unfortunately. Certain movie scenes, I gotta close my eyes so I don't feel ill. Especially if you go to like the IMAX theater. Or I went to Disneyland when I went as a kid, and we went on the Star Wars ride, which is basically one of those, the seats move and tilt a bit, but it's mostly just a screen that you're watching that gives you the illusion of moving. And I was fine when I was in grade 3 when we went, but when I went again when I was a teenager, oh, I was so sick afterwards. And then they were like, oh, bonked my camera there, whoops. They said, oh, let's get ice cream. And I was like, no, I'm barely keeping everything down as it is. If I eat ice cream, I'm done. I'm going to be ill. And they said, well, how could you get that sick? It didn't actually move, but my brain doesn't know the difference, so. Yeah, when we go on long trips, I definitely need my C-bands. Those pressure point ones that go on your wrist, yeah, they do help. I wore them when I was pregnant too, and it did make a difference, so. I've had people say that it's just a placebo or in your mind, but I'm like, well, you know what? If it works, then I'm going to keep using them. I don't care if there isn't a reason for it. If it is just my mind being tricked, well, at least it's tricking me into feeling better. So I'll take it. Who wants to be ill, right? Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely not one of those people who sailed through pregnancy, that's for sure. Oh, would have had more kids, but body's not good at staying pregnant, so yeah. But that's a sad subject. I won't get into that. I'm glad for the one I do have. I'm getting a fair amount done today. I think this may end up being another 600 stitch day, which is nice. And then when I go back to the other side, I may get quite a bit because, again, there's pillars on either side of this pattern, so it's the center bits that are going more slowly. Oh, I may finally get some of the fountain in this pass. I got just the very top of the water across the middle on this pass. So I got the bridge that was sort of up and to the left of the fountain. So I should get some of the fountain and the swans. I think they're swans. Unless they're ducks or geese, but whatever. The birds. But yeah, it's the fountain that drew me to this pattern. It's all pretty, but I love fountains. Okay. Ooh. Oh, pardon me. Yeah, I don't sleep well when it's not the weekend. I think because the anxiety of knowing I got to get up at a certain time. I think I was saying this last time. Because, yeah, on the weekends I don't sleep in that much more, but just knowing that I can sleep until I feel like getting up means I'm not anxious about it. I'm not thinking, oh, I only have a couple more hours before I got to get up, because I can get up when I want to. Yeah. Nope, somebody else bringing their garbage in. Rattle, rattle. Not going to leave that one threaded because it'll be a while till I get to it. Okay, so back up a bit. Little bit of a tangle here. Let's see if we can free it. Nope. Oh, actually, yes. Excellent. So yeah, as I said, you can see we're kind of moving away from that column style stitching from the pillar and back into the diagonal. Although, yeah, as always, I don't really have sharp diagonal lines. It's just a guide. Okay. And Again, I'm going to tuck a bunch of this away and unthread any. Yeah, and I'll do them as I do the next diagonal downwards. It's funny, speaking of anxiety, I had people say that having all these threads hanging would make them anxious. But, I don't know. I'm used to it, so it doesn't. Didn't make me anxious necessarily, but when I saw other people, I just thought, wow, how do they handle that without getting confused? But, yeah, once you know what it is, it looks more confusing than it actually is. It's just a case of, okay, I'm setting you aside to do later. I'll get back to you when I get there. Okay, now I'm thinking that, let's see how long that one is. Not very, that's what I thought. Okay, so I'm going to start a new one there. Well, I would have either way, but I'll start a long new one there. If that other strand that was part that I checked was shorter, I might have done just a single stitch here and used a really tiny piece, but yeah, as I'm going to need a long new thread soon, I will just start a long new one here. Oh, yarn's trying to come out. $57.9. Woohoo! Will I hit 58 by the time I hit the edge of this pattern or not? I don't know. But that'll take me a few more days to get there. Because, yeah, I've got about another over 1,000 stitches left before I'm filled this in to the edge. So we will see. The guinea pig's shaking like a dog. Shakes her whole cage. Okay, so I think I'm going to wrap this up now. Here, got quite a bit done in this session, I think. And I, again, thank you for joining me. And I hope I will see you here again another time. All right, thanks everybody. Bye.